There's one trait that determines if an avoidant regrets losing you. It makes you more memorable, more respected, and more irreplaceable. I call it paradoxical magnetism. All right, the way to think of this is kind of like the yin and yang principle. Most people think yin and yang just means opposites, but that's not quite right. In Chinese philosophy, yin is the dark, receptive, cooling inward energy, and yang is the bright, active, warming, outward energy. The important part is that neither exists in isolation. Each carries the seed of the other. That's why the symbol isn't split down the middle, it's curved. Balance comes from this distance, not from one side overpowering the other. And that's really the key to understanding paradoxical magnetism. With avoidance, balance doesn't come from copying their traits. It's why a lot of times that mirroring them isn't enough. So if they're distant and self-protective, you being distant and self-protective often will just double that gap. And I want to put myself on blast here for a moment. In past videos, you'll often hear me argue that avoidants respond to mirroring, but that's not quite right. Yes, a lot of times it works based off of contrast, but what works even better than mirroring is pulling them in via their inverse traits, the ones that counter their imbalance. You see, it's not always about being their mirror. It's about being their counterweight, their other half of the symbol, the yin to their yang. That's paradoxical magnetism. Of course, before we can even talk about what we're countering, we need to figure out what the internal imbalanced traits we are trying to counteract are. Now, in this video, I made this whole huge deal about crafting this Frankenstein-like person that avoidants are irresistibly drawn to. I'd like to do something similar here, where we craft the hidden imbalances inside the avoidant. Think of it like we're kind of sketching their shadow traits, the parts of themselves that they try to hide, even from their own awareness. Now, these are the traits they don't want anyone to see. Now, before you is a Trojan horse. On the outside, it looks polished, harmless, maybe even a tad impressive, but hidden inside are 6 soldiers, and each one is going to represent a trait that avoidants work hard to keep out of sight. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Soldiers and a Trojan horse, really? If you've ever read the Iliad or saw Troy with Brad Pitt, the whole trick was cramming all the warriors inside this giant wooden horse and wheeling it past the gates. Same deal kind of applies here, except the gates are the avoidance relationships. And we're going to start first with soldier number 1, the one I like to call the double-edged sword soldier. All right, this is the soldier that craves intimacy but fears engulfment. Now, I've literally talked about this hundreds of times throughout this channel, but it bears repeating again here. Avoidants often live in the strange push-pull dynamic. Deep down, they want the same intimacy everyone else does. They want closeness, they want affection, they want connection, but the second that intimacy starts to feel too real, their panic button gets slammed. And then suddenly, their texts get shorter, your calls to them get missed, and they retreat. Closeness doesn't just feel good, it feels dangerous. Like it's going to swallow their independence whole. And I think that's actually why relationships with avoidants often feels like this whiplash. It's warm one moment and then ice cold the next. Let's move on to our next soldier, soldier number 2, what I'm calling the shield bearer. Now, if the first soldier swings a double-edged sword, this one hides behind a shield the size of a wall. Avoidants learn early in life that relying on others feels unsafe, so they default to a survival strategy, which basically boils down to I can only rely on me. Every move in the relationship gets filtered through that singular mindset. It's why they guard their time, why they guard their space, even their emotions. It's why they guard their time. It's why they guard their space. Even their emotions is guarded like a fortress. Now, on the outside, it looks completely selfish, but inside, it's really just self-protection. And the shield bearer isn't charging forward to win battles. He's crouched, shield up, convinced that the only way to survive is never to let anyone past his defenses. Then next up, we have soldier number 3, the Iron Drill Master. This soldier marches in perfect formation. Every step is measured. Every move feels rehearsed. All right, one of the common traits you're going to see with avoidance is this idea that control and routine are more than habits, they're armor. The chaos of emotions feels unpredictable, so they cling to structure as a way to feel safe. Dinner at the same spot, bedtime at the same hour, emotions kept neatly boxed away. Now, from the outside, it can actually look pretty disciplined and really admirable, but underneath what's happening inside, well, the Iron Drill Master isn't leading with strength. He's terrified of uncertainty, and the tighter he clings to routine, the less room there is for spontaneity and intimacy or the messy give and take that real relationships require. Soldier number 4 is the mute archer. Now, this guy never shouts. This guy never changes. He stays silent in the shadows, arrows locked tightly in his quiver. That's how avoidants tend to handle their emotions. They don't express them openly. They suppress them. They bury them. They lock them away where no one can reach. It's not that the feelings don't exist. I think that's important to point out here. It's that showing them feels dangerous. I mean, we've covered this already, but an avoidant is going to view showing emotions like handing an enemy their weapon. So instead, our mute archer soldier withholds. No vulnerability, no visible cracks. Now, from the outside, it's going to look cold and detached, but the truth is every arrow is still there, hidden in their quiver. Never released, though. Never acknowledged. It's just weighing them down in silence. And that leads us pretty nicely to soldier number 5, the lone wolf rider. This soldier doesn't march with the army. He rides off alone, convinced that the only safe path is the one he clears by himself. That's the heart of avoidant hyper-independence. It's not preference, it's survival. So when early caregiving was inconsistent, avoidants learned that needing others leads to disappointment. So they basically doubled down on this radical self-reliance. Next up, we have soldier number 6, the suspicious gatekeeper. This soldier stands at the doorway, hand always on his sword, scanning for threats that may not even exist. This is an avoidant's lens of distrust, if you will. Every gesture, every promise, every I love you gets examined for hidden strings. Now, deep down, what an avoidant is expecting is manipulation or rejection or abandonment, because that's what their nervous system was trained to anticipate from a very young age. Now, all 6 of these soldiers live inside every avoidant. And most of the time they stay hidden. They're locked away in that wooden horse. But the moment intimacy starts to feel threatening, the hatch opens, the soldiers spill out, they'll start cutting down the closeness that was just beginning to grow. It feels really sudden a lot of times. One minute you're safe inside the city walls and the next everything is on fire. And then just as quickly they're just gone. The soldiers retreat, the horse rolls back into hiding, and the avoidant is left alone again, wondering why the battlefield is empty, even though it's their fault. Real quick though. This is Sonia. She posted this in my community way back in 2022. He proposed. He surprised me on our walk by the lake. We move into our new home together in July, and the marriage is set for the fall of 2023. Oh, and according to her, her now husband was a fearful avoidant. She even linked to a YouTube interview where she broke down exactly how she got him to propose. Now, the big question on your mind is probably, well, what did Sonia do to get this kind of success? Well, here's the thing. Sonia didn't beg, chase, or wait around for her avoidant to change. She followed a proven framework, one that's helped hundreds of people get their avoidant partners to open up, commit, and even propose. And this framework, it's inside the Seiter Super Offer. Right now, for YouTube viewers only, I'm giving you everything you need to get results like Sonia's. My complete course library, a private community, weekly live streams. Now, normally I sell all of these things separately, but today you're gonna get everything at 50% off. A one-time payment of $97. No monthly fees, no hidden costs, just everything you need to make your avoidant regret losing you and reignite their obsession. So if you're interested, click the link in the description below and start your transformation today. Okay. Today, I want to talk about how you counter these soldiers with paradoxical magnetism, because here's the truth. Every soldier inside that Trojan horse has a weakness, and you're not defenseless. If you're using paradoxical magnetism, you've got your own army too. Take soldier number 1, the double-edged sword soldier that thrives on contradiction, pulling close, then slashing away. If you'll recall, this is the one who craves intimacy one moment, but panics the second it threatens their independence. Your counter soldier is the warm wanderer. So instead of panicking when he retreats, you offer genuine warmth first and then calmly step back. This move confuses the rhythm. Attachment psychology actually backs this up. Avoidants deactivate when intimacy feels engulfing, but paradoxically, they re-engage when they see that space doesn't mean abandonment. The warm wanderer shows up with closeness, but never cages. That's the one opponent that the double-edged sword soldier can't outmaneuver. With soldier number 2, the shield bearer, you'll remember this is the guy who had the shield and hides behind self-focus because he's convinced the only safe option is to depend only on himself. The way you counter that is with the selfless guardian. This is the part of you that shows kindness, but always with boundaries. You give, but you don't give yourself away. Object relations research shows that insecure attachment styles build a kind of self-system to survive. For avoidance, that system says, if I only rely on me, I can't be disappointed. It's essentially a survival script. The problem is that script cuts off mutual trust before it can actually even begin. But when they encounter someone who's generous, without strings, the old system begins to glitch. The shield bearer expects that intimacy will mean pressure or control. So instead, the selfless guardian offers care without trying to invade. That paradox, closeness that doesn't trap or seek commitment, is what begins to disarm the defenses. Next is soldier number 3, the iron drill master. You'll remember this dude as the one who clings to control and routine. So if every day looks the same, there's no room for emotional uncertainty sneaking in. The way you counter this is with the steady explorer. This is the part of you that's grounded and reliable, but also knows how to break the monotony. You can bring stability and surprise. Research on cognitive rigidity shows that avoidants cope by narrowing their world. Less risk, less novelty, less chance of being hurt. But novelty itself is actually pretty powerful. It activates dopamine, it sparks interest and makes the relationship feel alive. So when you combine predictability with the right amount of freshness, that iron drill master's rigid grip begins to loosen. The 4th soldier, the mute archer, is a pretty fun one. Remember, this is the dude that stays silent, holding their emotions back like arrows in a quiver. The way you counter this is with the calm envoy. This is the part of you that models emotional openness, but never in a way that overwhelms. You share how you feel with clarity and calm instead of flooding the room with intensity. And we all know that avoidants lean on suppression as their main strategy. They push feelings down until they seem to disappear. But when they encounter someone who expresses emotions openly and without chaos, it creates corrective modeling. The mute archer expects vulnerability to be dangerous, but the calm envoy shows it could be steady, safe, and even grounding. Now, 5th, we have the lone wolf rider. This is the soldier who insists on traveling alone. Hyper-independence for them feels like strength, but it's really just a shield, built from early lessons that relying on others only leads to disappointment. Now, the way you counter this is with the interdependent ally. This is the part of you that can stand strong on your own, but also knows how to lean in when it matters. So what does that actually look like? Well, let's say you're stressed out about work. The lone wolf instinct would be to shut down and handle it alone. The interdependent ally does it differently. They take time to process their own feelings, then they let their partner in. So for example, I've been carrying a lot of stress from work this week and I've done what I can to manage it. But I'd really like your support tonight. Maybe we can cook together or just talk for a bit. That's interdependence. You don't dump everything on them and you don't wall them out. You handle your side and invite them to share the load. Finally, we have Soldier 6, the suspicious gatekeeper. You'll remember this is the one who constantly scans for threats and is convinced every kind of word has hidden strings attached. For avoidance, distrust isn't paranoia, it's protection. If they expect rejection or manipulation, then at least they won't be blindsided when it happens. Now, the way you counter this is with the steady truth teller. This is the part of you that shows up authentically and, more importantly, consistently. Not just saying, you can trust me, but proving it in small ways over and over again. Okay, that was a lot, but when you step back and look at all 6 soldiers and all 6 of their weaknesses, one consistent pattern jumps out. Every single counter soldier, every inverse trait is a blend of opposites. Not an extreme, not a one-sided solution, but a middle path, a balance that integrates two poles at once. That's the paradoxical balance that avoidants secretly crave. Now, why does this matter? Well, it's because avoidants live at the extremes. Too much closeness feels suffocating. Too much distance feels empty. Their entire imbalance is black or white. But these inverse traits, this balanced duality, stand out because they solve the either or problem. They embody the yin-yang dynamic the avoidant can't generate on their own. And I bet if you really think about it, you'll start to see that avoidants are drawn to people who can hold contradictions gracefully. Now, it feels kind of magnetic. It feels safe and exciting at the same time. But we arrive at the same question I always inevitably ask during videos like this. Can you achieve this balanced duality without losing yourself? This is the question that people are often too afraid to ask, because if we're being brutally honest, the average person dating an avoidant almost always loses themselves in the process. Here's why. When humans are under stress, balance isn't the instinct. Imbalance is. Anxious partners overcorrect by giving too much. They'll chase, they'll plead, they'll over-explain. Secure partners often bend until their own security starts to erode. Even fiercely independent partners can end up shrinking their own needs to avoid conflict. And so what you have here with the avoidant dynamics at play is this kind of gravity pull. When the avoidant deactivates, it drags their partner into reaction mode. Suddenly, you're not living your own rhythm. You're living in theirs. And that's where the paradox becomes rare. Holding balanced duality, warmth with space, selflessness with boundaries, independence with connection, takes awareness, discipline, and inner security. That's not where most people are when they're desperately trying to keep a relationship alive. And it's why breakups with avoidance feel so identity shattering. People wake up months or even years later asking, where did I go? When did my entire life start revolving around whether they text me back or not? But you don't have to lose yourself. The secret isn't bending to their rhythm. It's learning to stand steady in your own. Because paradoxical magnetism, those inverse traits we've spent this entire video talking about, only work when they're real. If you're just pretending to give space, they'll feel the performance. If you're just pretending to hold boundaries, they'll test them and watch them collapse. The power is in embodying balance for yourself first and letting that balance ripple outward. Think of it like walking a tightrope. The wind is blowing, the crowd is watching, the drop below is complete chaos. But the balance you find up there, that's yours. No one can take it from you. You shouldn't be worried about making an avoidant regret losing you, even though I know that's what 90% of people really, really want. You shouldn't even be worried about getting them back. What you should be worried about is improving yourself always. Because when you master this balance that I'm talking about, the balance of opposites, you stop chasing, you stop shrinking, and you stop living in someone else's cycle. You finally become the one that they regret losing.